This episode was recorded in the Sydney Borough Brass Studio, and you are listening to the Wholesome Way podcast, hosted by Alexander Lobb. Please keep in mind everything shared in this podcast is for inspiration only and shouldn't be taken as medical or professional health advice. If you're making changes to your health, routines, or lifestyle, please check in with a qualified health professional first. And now, on with the episode.
Welcome back to the Wholesome Way podcast. You're listening in to a transition episode between season 1 and season 2. In this episode, I wanted to reflect on season 1 and everything that was shared through my guests, conversations, and also through my solo episodes. And then really set the stage for season 2. Firstly, I wanted to acknowledge just how far the podcast has come. When I started the Wholesome Way, I had no idea how much these conversations and your messages and your feedback and support would truly impact me personally. It started as a creative activity for me, finally something that I could create and share something with other people that I had made. I've been craving that for a long time, ever since I'd been a child. So it's been incredible to be able to share everything on the Wholesome Way and hear that it's resonating with people. I also wanted to express my genuine gratitude for you, the listener, for your support, your messages, your feedback, and also new followers. And of course, my guest speakers. So, season 1, Finding the Real You. In my solo episodes that I released from my experience in focusing on connecting to my identity and the real me inside, I explored the themes of self-reflection, the power of creativity, bringing out the inner child in you and creating something, being self-sufficient, and then also challenging yourself to grow, stepping out of the comfort zone and finding a challenge in something that interests you. In my guest speaker episodes, I had some wonderful people share their wisdom and their practical tips on finding the real you inside. We had, in episode 1, Alejandro Arjueles Bullon, who taught us some ways and some ideas about switching off our mind's autopilot and honing in on our attention to bring balance between the right and left hemispheres of our brain, the red to blue tool. In episode 3, I had Justine Lobb on the podcast in a special Walk and Talk podcast episode where Justine really took a deep dive with me into taking responsibility for your own happiness and letting life flow through us rather than trying to control everything and trusting our gut and our intuition. In episode 5, I had a mentor and idol of mine, an ex-work colleague, Will Wright, on the show to teach us about tuning in and how to tune into your life's tuning fork and finding true alignment between exercise, our work, and how we can overcome barriers that stop us from reconnecting with things that we find important and beneficial for our lives. In episode 6, I had Tim Davey, aka the Urban Monk on YouTube, onto the podcast to discuss returning to your true nature and just how important that is throughout our lives. And just giving yourself permission to be present. Finally, in episode 8, I had my life and career coach, Susanna Kenyon-Meir, onto the podcast in the first studio recorded episode in London to examine the power of harnessing intention, being aware and releasing limiting beliefs, and ultimately achieving clarity to create work-life alignment. I think the biggest takeaway from season 1 of the podcast were 2 recurring themes. One of them, and it didn't matter which episode or who I was talking to, but it came back to one truth: that living a wholesome life, a healthy, balanced, fulfilled journey through life, it starts from within. It starts from us, and we have the power. We are the creators to decide and make that choice. It's about awareness. It's about honesty with yourself and others, and taking the courage to change direction onto that wholesome way, that path, when something or someone no longer fits. And the second theme that kept coming up was that life is this journey of continually learning, and the ultimate admission that I only know that I know nothing. One of the most wise things that you can say and admit to yourself and others. As a personal reflection on how the podcast has affected me and inspired me as the host, is just how many amazing people I have in my life. It's truly made me feel grateful and humble that I have so many people around me to support me and to inspire me and teach me lessons about how to live a more wholesome life. And I hope that some of these ideas, these rituals, these practices, this knowledge has rubbed off on you a little bit. That's my hope, but it has truly changed me. And midway through the podcast season, I decided to quit my job because I felt no more alignment with work in the 9 to 5. I've always had this feeling inside me every day that I sit at the desk doing my job, a hole that needs to be filled for health, for fulfillment, and for joy. And it just seems like the right time. And the podcast definitely led me to that decision. Having those conversations with my life and career coach, Susanna, and I've never felt more aligned and more in my element than ever before. Hosting this podcast, seeing the reactions that it's getting from all of you and the influence that it's providing, and having this creative activity for myself and to share with other people. Every conversation has peeled back another layer for me on the truth of what it really means to live a healthy, happy, and fulfilled, wholesome life. So that's season 1. Season 2, we are transitioning into the theme of building your healthiest form. Because part of the reason why I wanted to build this podcast was to help people go through the process of becoming their most wholesome self and finding their wholesome path. Season 1 was on finding the real you from within, because if we want to make true long-term change, we have to start from within our thoughts and how we're feeling inside. And that way we can then transition and progress into focusing on our physical reality. The structure of this podcast is centered around that, so that you can listen from start to finish, season 1, season 2, season 3, and make some progress in your own life. So season 2, We'll be focusing on the physical reality, the environment around us, and our physical bodies. Over the years, I have learned so much about improving my physical health, especially within the world of fitness. I always saw it as a bit of a chore, like all of us do sometimes. I went to the gym, and there are some periods where it was easy to go, and especially with an accountability partner, but I always relapsed. What I discovered recently, last year, is to have a purpose, an end goal for my fitness. And what that eventuated into, with the encouragement and the influence of my fiance, is High Rocks, the world fitness race that's become quite popular these days. And I've just found so much purpose in working out, being able to work towards a race that's against myself. And so that's the sort of thing that I wanted to share with you in season 2 to help improve our physical form in the best way possible and in the most enjoyable way that's aligned with our identity. In this season, I'm going to have a few guest speakers with a couple of solo episodes within the mix from my experience, as always. We're going to be talking about strength, physical strength, energy, movement, nutrition, recovery, and discipline to do all of the above. I'll have some interviews with some health experts, athletes. I have a paramedic as well who I'm going to interview. So this season is essentially about integrating what we know about ourselves from our identity inside into our physical body and creating that coherence between mind and body. So in closing, I just wanted to say thank you so much for being part of season 1 and following along this wonderful journey. I really appreciate your feedback, your comments on the Instagram page and whatever app that you're listening to this podcast on. I invite you, of course, to follow, subscribe, and rate the show if you're really enjoying it. It would really help me spread this wisdom and these practical tips around the world through the Wholesome Way podcast to reach all of those lovely people out there who are starting to ask themselves those deeper questions about what it truly means to live a wholesome life. And before you listen to the first episode of season 2, I would invite you to really think about what it means to you to build your healthiest form. What would that look like? I can't wait to share this new season with you all. And as always, stay wholesome.
I hope something resonated with you in this conversation and that you've taken a practical tip or two to set you on your wholesome way. If you liked what you heard, please give the Wholesome Way a follow on your podcast app so you know exactly when each weekly episode is ready to stream. And if you would like to be super generous with helping me grow the podcast, click the share button and send it via an Instagram story, a DM, or a WhatsApp message to someone in your family or close friends who would truly relate with the themes, ideas, and practical tips in this episode. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to listen today and for joining me on this incredible journey. Stay wholesome.